Before we start this week's podcast, I wanted to give a quick shout out to our newest patron, RM Mac. Thank you for joining the patron community. We are so glad to have you. Thank you for
and
supporting.
welcome.
Thank you for supporting Nurses Uncorked. And again, if you guys want behind the scenes content, lots of fun things that we do on the side with our patrons, there is a link in the show notes description of the podcast. I'm Nurse Jessica Seitz.
And I'm Nurse Erica.
And we're Nurses Uncorked,
the podcast that takes nursing facts
with nursing comedy and makes a cocktail out of them.
Don't forget to hit that subscribe button wherever you listen to podcasts. And please rate, review, and download.
Also, if you're interested in supporting Nurses Uncorked podcast and getting early access to episodes, behind-the-scenes content, and bloopers,
check out the patron link in the description of the podcast.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Nurses Uncorked for another week of hot topics and hot drama. It's myself, Nurse Jessica Seitz, along with the lovely Nurse Erica. And today we have a very timely and a very important, possibly historic event that is going to be taking place. And today we're going to be interviewing two lovely ladies. We've got Denise Arnold with us, which is a registered nurse, and we have Dr. Jennifer Lincoln, an OB-GYN with us. And first, I just want to say welcome before I tell everybody why you're here. Thank you for coming on to Nurses Uncorked podcast.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We're ready to do this. I'm going to switch gears a little bit and let Erica kind of take it away from here, and let's find out what we're all talking about today.
Yeah, I wanted to introduce Dr. Jennifer Lincoln. She is a board-certified OB-GYN, as you mentioned, who is passionate about helping girls, women, and those assigned female at birth understand their bodies and feel empowered to advocate for themselves. She received her medical degree from Tulane University School of Medicine before completing her residency in obstetrics and gynecology at Oregon Health and Science University. She practices as an OB hospitalist in Portland, Oregon, and also uses social media to educate, advocate, bust the myths surrounding vaginal and reproductive health with her community of over 4 million followers. Dr. Lincoln founded the website 3 for Freedom, a hub that spreads awareness about the availability of mail-order birth control and emergency contraception in all 50 states. She is an author, a regular media contributor, and the president-elect for the Society of OB-GYN Hospitalists. Welcome, Dr. Lincoln.
And then Denise, let's talk about Denise Arnold. Denise is also joining us today. Denise is a BSN prepared registered nurse at Providence, Newburgh, in Oregon. She's been a nurse for 13 years and has worked at Providence since 2016. Denise has worked in a variety of nursing specialties, including ED, med-surg, surgical tele, and skilled nursing facilities, and currently is working right now in the ICU. She has been on the Oregon Nurses Association Committee Bargaining Unit since 2022 and currently serves as the bargaining chair. Welcome again, Denise. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you for having me.
And just to let everybody know why you guys are here today, Dr. Lincoln and Denise are here because after months of failed negotiations with Providence Health in Oregon that included mediation and a 5-day cooling off period, 5,000 frontline healthcare workers will be going on strike January 10th. But this is no ordinary strike. This will impact 8 hospitals and 1 clinic, making it the largest healthcare strike in Oregon, and I believe possibly the first time doctors in Oregon will strike. It includes nurses and physicians, PAs, NPs, nurse midwives, all striking together. And did I mention it's an open-ended strike, which is a power move, in my opinion.
We know how you love those open-ended strikes.
I love it. It's powerful. It's powerful.
Yes.
Of course, everything we're talking about today regarding Providence is alleged and it's opinions. But I did want to go ahead and read part of a statement that Providence CEO Jennifer Burrows released in response to some of this, saying that the union was not willing to compromise and sent mixed signals in response to the company's proposals and said, quote, once again, our leadership team's attention will turn to caring for our community during this work stoppage. We have been transparent with union leaders that in the event of a work stoppage, bargaining stops to support our priority of ensuring we continue to provide excellent patient care, end quote.
Sure.
Mhm.
Bleh. Yeah, good gaslighting. That's great.
Gaslighting. Yeah.
Allegedly.
I have a cocktail of the week, and it is brought to you by the Christmas present that Jessica got me, which is this book, The Home Bartender by Shane Carley. And this book is honestly awesome. Look how many pages I already have marked there of drinks I want to make. So the first one I'm going to make this week is called the Peach Tree Iced Tea. There's a picture of it if you're watching.
That looks good.
I know. I'm so excited for this one. Okay. So you start with 6 mint leaves. You do have to buy mint. You tear them in half. You put them in the bottom of your glass, and you add 1 part peach schnapps. And then you're supposed, which I've already added, and then you're supposed to muddle it, which I had to Google because I didn't exact, and I don't have a muddler, so I'm using an ice cream scoop, which they said you can do.
Whatever.
And you like smush it into the bottom until it's kind of crushed. And you know that it's crushed or muddled appropriately when you can smell the mint, the fresh mint. Okay.
Can you
So
smell
that's
it?
muddled.
Can you smell
Yeah,
it yet?
I can. And then you add your ice, which I have here. And then you add 1 part vodka. Okay, my cheap vodka here. So I'm adding that. And then you add 2 parts iced tea.
Okay.
Add that. ASMR. There we go.
Yep. We love that.
You mix it. And then you add a little mint leaf, mint sprig, whatever that's called, for garnish.
To make it look. It
Isn't
almost
this
looks
so
like
pretty? A Long Island.
Yes.
Oh,
That's
I
what
do
I was
love
thinking.
a Long Island. Well,
Yes.
I have to tell you, I'm not a big like mint person, but I love iced tea, so I wanted to give this a try. And this is really good.
Yay!
This
That's
is
a
not
great-
like the
Cheers.
mint is not overpowering. It's very refreshing, and it's so pretty.
All right, let's get into this week's podcast.
All right, so let's get into some questions, if that's okay, to either of you or both of you. Well, first, Dr. Lincoln, you first caught my attention because you're so vocal about being a unionized physician, and most physicians are not unionized, unfortunately. You both work for Providence, but are members of 2 different unions. Can you each tell us which union you are represented by and what that means to you?
All right. Well, I'm part of the Oregon Nurses Association. I've been with them since 2016 when I started with Providence. What it means to me is somebody's got my back. I worked at Salem before, and their hospital is not union, and I definitely would say it's better at Providence. It just knowing that there's something written down that they have to do. It's like a set of rules we're all going to follow, and it can be kind of difficult sometimes keeping up with it and making sure it's being adhered to, but it's definitely a protection. As far as like being on the bargaining chair side, I've been doing that this contract cycle and doing the negotiations with Providence. And so it's kind of like having a voice. It's being able to come to the table with Providence and have an equal footing to try and have a voice for the patients. And so that's what being in the union means to me.
So we are, as the hospitalists, we are represented by the Pacific Northwest Hospitalist Medical Association, which is a mouthful. And that is a subset of AFT Healthcare, which is part of the bigger American Federation of Teachers. And our particular union that we're a part of and that we're bargaining right now is serviced by ONA. So that's why I wanted Denise to go first, because it's not so straightforward. But the long and the short of it is that we have our own separate hospitalist union, but we are serviced by the ONA. And so we are all working together to, like you said, to bargain and get what we need for our patients, and is also why we're, here today chatting with you all.
That's I can't wait to dive into more of this. This is so interesting to me. Like Erica was saying earlier before we got on, my husband's an OB-GYN as well and a hospitalist. So I'm going to have tons of questions for
I
him later
love that
today
so
regarding,
much.
regarding all of this. I like to do a little icebreaker because I feel like everybody is always a little bit nervous in the beginning. Erica's like, what is she doing?
What is she doing?
I want to say first that I think Denise's hair is rocking it. I
Yes.
love the pink. For those of you that are only listening, she has some amazing, and I'm a pink girl, so I
you are.
love Denise's hair. And then I wanted to comment on Dr. Lincoln's sweatshirt. Is this a Taylor Swift uterus? What?
No, but it should be.
That's what it looks like to me.
So for those who are also not watching, it's a uterus, but it's made out of a snake, which is very reputation coded. Let's be clear.
Yes,
but is also very much that Texas. It says "Don't tread on me" underneath, so it's a play on that.
Okay,
but you're right. You take from it what it means to you.
It's all up to interpretation,
That's
right? So this question will be for both of you, or if one just wants to answer, whatever you ladies are comfortable with. So let's start by what have you been asking for during negotiations? And is it anything that's not already being offered to other hospitals in your community or even within your own system? Who wants to take that one?
I'll take a stab at it first. I would say what we're asking for right now, particularly at Newburgh, is to be treated the same as the other Providence hospitals. We're having to fight. We're like us in Medford are the redheaded stepchildren just getting beat around and left behind. And as far as like all of us ONA wide in this, nothing we're asking for isn't something that isn't already attained at another hospital in Oregon. So we're really just trying to look for equity to help recruit and retain our staff.
Yeah, that is very familiar to what we're doing too. What we're asking for is also very on par and is with other hospitals in our system. And so just to orient people who are listening, so I'm an OB hospitalist, and the hospitalists that are in my bargaining unit are the internal medicine hospitalists, the med peds hospitalists, palliative care hospitalists, and our group. And in total, we're about 70 doctors and nurse practitioners. And a lot of people say, well, you're doctors and you're asking for more money. Like that's so disgusting. And I want to make it clear that we are asking for compensation changes, but they are to make us on par with other hospitals in Portland because we are paid less. And so as you can imagine, the internal medicine doctors are hemorrhaging doctors because they're overworked. They are caring for more patients than they're staffed for. And that crushes you. And after a while, when you see that you can be paid more to what you're worth at another hospital and to be more supported and to feel safer, you go there. That's just common sense. And for us as OB hospitalists, we are making about 25% less than other hospitalists in Portland. So yes, we are asking for some of that, but the big things are staffing. We want to be able to have a say. And this is something that obviously resonates with nurses, right? We want to have a say. And we initially started out asking with these very complicated staffing targets and what would happen if when, and as compromising as you do when you are bargaining in good faith, we have simplified that. And the only thing Providence has offered is that they agree to make a committee that has up to 12 months to do something. But that's not helping anybody right now. They've also, they've put forward that this committee is really going to help us and it's going to have clinicians and administration at the table. But the problem is that the tiebreaker would be the chief medical officer who, as we can imagine, is beholden to Providence. The other huge thing that we've asked for, which again, is what other people are getting, is to be protected from subcontracting or outsourcing. So we've seen at my hospital, the Oregon anesthesia group was replaced by sound physicians, which has been a very rough transition. And we were down quite a while. Our ORs were down. People who needed surgeries were not able to get them for quite a while. We were told this would be an easy transition, but it's not been. We are worried that they will do the same with us, as they will subcontract and replace us with cheaper labor. And after initially saying we didn't want any language on subcontracting, we didn't want that allowed at all, we compromised because Providence said, hey, we need to account for extenuating circumstances. We said, sure. We offered language that would say that, and it's the exact same language as another hospitalist group here in Portland, and they refuse. So we are literally asking for what another hospital not too far away is getting. And then lastly, I want to I want to highlight that the other things that we're asking for are specific to my group is night differential, which is what the internal medicine and med-peds hospitals get, but they won't give it to the OB hospitalists. And there are quite a few things that they won't give to my group, which feels very much like a gender equity issue, and is rather upsetting. They want to have, we have palliative care hospitalists who are a tiny group. They wanted to say, hey, could you please not send us to other hospitals like Medford and other places that are far from Portland? And Providence refuses. And then the hospitals tried to compromise and said, okay, if you're going to send us there, can we just have a say in how that goes? Could we maybe be compensated for that at a different rate, or maybe have travel paid? And Providence said, absolutely not. So there is much more, but these are the high points. And I think any patient listening would say, what are you talking about? They don't want to give that to you, because if we don't have these things, I don't know how we're going to hire other people to come replace us at some point when we retire or go elsewhere, because we're so burnt out. So it's the very nuts and bolts aspect of it.
I was just going to put something like in perspective for a moment, like for somebody that might be listening that, like you were saying, is not in the medical field and they have no idea. Could you give just a quick example? Let's say during the transition with anesthesia, where they were, have another group coming in. Obviously, as an OB, you have emergencies and you still have a stat section. You can't just put those off. How has the transition been in having to deal with emergency situations that obviously you have to? It's not like you can say, I'm sorry, our anesthesia team is in transition.
Right.
We're going to have to hold off on that. How has the flow been with that?
Right. It was, I'm not going to lie, it was tough. And I want to say that the OB anesthesiologists who we had, and we were immediately staffed with them because they did realize that we can't shut down our operating rooms. Our surgeries are rarely elective. The folks that they sent to us were lovely, and they are lovely. And they also, some of them were unable to log into Epic and to do certain things in emergencies that showed us that they were not properly oriented. And it was extremely stressful for myself, for the nurses. And I think that we did the best we could and we provided the best care that we could, but it was not easy. And we were scared going to work because you just, like you said, it's a team effort and it's a dance. It's got to be a beautiful dance on labor and delivery to do everything well. And when you have new folks who you feel weren't adequately oriented to the unit, didn't know the basic things that you would expect would happen on orientation, it showed us that they were just kind of thrown in without proper orientation, really.
Wow.
Everything you're asking for sounds so completely reasonable. And you mentioned staffing committees. I have a lot of strong opinions and experience with staffing committees. And I have to tell you, in my opinion, they are nothing more than a red herring to give people the feeling like they're participating, that they're affecting some sort of change, when in reality, nothing from a staffing committee is enforceable.
Yes, that nothing has teeth. And I want to be clear too, like, I just want to show up and go to work and like deliver babies and do surgeries and stuff. Like I've never been on any of these committees, but the hospitals who have been, they've had a steering committee for years and it's done nothing.
Exactly. And nothing comes of it.
Another fun thing about the OB hospitalists is there's only one of us on it at a time on a very busy unit. And the nursing administration can decide when we need to go on divert, when it's unsafe. We asked to have a voice at that table because, again, there's one of us, and sometimes we're managing multiple emergencies, and we asked for input on that and to be included in those decisions, and we were told that was not possible. But we can make a committee about it.
Yep, it's just a distraction to shut you up. Yeah.
To your point, Nurse Erica, about staffing committee, I also served on the staffing committee at Newburgh, and I will tell you it was some interesting experiences. Our CNO basically used it as a point to bully the nurses into voting for whatever management wanted. It was rough.
Yeah, I've seen similar things. Yeah. Denise, I've heard that Providence seems allegedly to be treating bargaining units differently. What has your experience been at Newburgh?
Yeah, so kind of like how I mentioned earlier, we have Providence Medford. They've had so many regressive offers at the bargaining table and nobody else will be getting them. At Newburgh, we had secured some agreement on some of the stuff, and they were regressive and decided to offer less again at the next chance. There's so many things. Like, they try to tell us that, oh, Newburgh is out in the hillbillies. They're this just really far away thing, and it's almost like we're purposely kind of kept behind the other contracts. And the result of that is that our nurses come in, they get experience, and they leave. So you have an entire hospital who is like a training ground for new grads, which you can imagine safety-wise is really not ideal. So it's a very divide and conquer. And, we see that from Providence all the time. It's their idea of how to maintain power is to keep us all separated, which is why the union has been so pivotal, and kind of the resources they've invested so that we know, hey, we're not alone. We're not an island. We can do this together. We can fight for the standards other units have and have been given, just, I don't know, because they are cool. I don't know what their rationale is. I really have no idea why Providence tries to treat the different units separately and differently. At Newburgh, money is definitely not the end all to be all of everything. Most nurses I know, we do this because we love the job. I mean, it's not exactly a profession you could stay in if you don't. And we've been making $6 less an hour than St. Vincent for over 2 years now. See, we are not just losing our nurses out of system, we're also losing them to other Providence hospitals, because at the end of the day, you've got to make ends meet. And, most nurses come out of school with like $1,500 student loans payments, and we've all seen inflation and what that's doing. So at the end of the day, at least just the small part of this that we're arguing about that is financial is really only there so that we can help recruit and retain people. At Newburgh, we really need to keep retaining our experienced nurses and stop losing them. It just is really, when you're training charges out of the new cohort of residents, it's not really the safest.
No. And this is all about patient safety, right? Like you said, this is literally about how we keep our patients the safest. And I've worked at rural hospitals before, and I'm sorry, that's where you need the experienced nurses, because you don't have everything that you might have at a big hub, and you need those nurses who got those years. So they've been trying this for a while. They tried to initially exclude us from central bargaining. We went to central bargaining a couple weeks ago. In order to allow the palliative care hospitals to be part of central bargaining, they forced them to give up their ask to not be forced to travel elsewhere. That was their biggest ask, and they had to give that up. They really sacrificed in order to be at the table, and that really breaks my heart for literally the doctors that help your family and your friends in their hardest moments. And then just yesterday, they sent out a press release. Let me be clear. They communicated with OPB, which is our local branch of NPR, saying that they were ready to go back to the table. So for folks who aren't aware, once we issued our 10-day strike notice, Providence said they would not be bargaining in that time because they were, quote unquote, preparing for the strike, which we all know is untrue. They have been preparing for the strike by reserving, allegedly, hotel rooms and offering locums and hosting jobs back in the fall. And the chief medical officer, Dr. Ray Moreno, went on TV saying that the reason they did that was because they have to focus on getting people ready for the strike. And we put out a petition. We said, you need to get back to the table and bargain because you can avoid the strike. Let me be clear. Nobody wants this strike, and it's completely avoidable if Providence continues to bargain. They are currently doing something illegal by not doing that. We have filed unfair labor practice. Just yesterday, they sent out this press release saying they were ready. They were calling us, the doctors, back to the table. They very insultingly said, we're good. We have filled almost all the nursing positions. We're fine. We won't bargain with them, but we want to bargain with the doctors, which is extremely insulting to the nurses because we know that the replacements are not of the same quality. We can talk about that later. And they went to OPB and said that. They did not come to us and say that. So they're now communicating through the media. And what's weird is that we never left the bargaining table. The hospitalists and the Providence Women's Clinics have proposals that we have given to them on December 23rd and the 27th, and they have been in their hands, and the ball is in their court to respond. So we have not left the bargaining table. They have. one of the lead executives whose bargaining is out on PTO until January 13th. And when my union emailed the bargaining people at Providence during the holidays, they got an out of office while bargaining team members canceled vacations to stay in town for bargaining. So I want to be very clear that they tried to do this strategically, to lie that we left the bargaining table, which we didn't, and then to also make it look like to split us and make the doctors go back to the table when we never left. And we had an emergency meeting last night. 75 of us showed up, and we all stood in solidarity and said, we are welcome. You are welcome to come back, and you need to bargain with everybody. We stand with our nursing colleagues.
That's amazing.
The tactic was just, and to see the nurses that were crying, the panicking, the messages I got, the calls, because it works, right? It gets in your mind and you think they're going to leave us behind.
Yeah.
I don't think they know how much support we have and we all have for each other, because none of us work without all of us.
That literally makes me want to cry. Like, that's the sweetest thing.
She has to cry at least once an episode.
I know. I'm a very emotional person, but you like to think that everybody's a team. You do like to think that, but not all hospitals, all places are like that, unfortunately. So to know that the doctors are backing the nurses and vice versa is huge, because that's what it is with numbers, and with there's more power with the more people you have standing up for something.
100%.
Yeah,
nurses are phenomenal. It's the reason I work at St. Vincent's. I did my residency. I rotated there. These are some of the same nurses that taught me how to not be an idiot intern. Like, we are all in this together.
And it's true. You say that, and it's like, I feel like they just think of staffing as a number, and that's it. It doesn't matter if somebody's had 20 years experience and can basically know when a fetus is about to crash before it even happens, versus somebody that is brand new. I don't know why. They don't want to see it. They've got blinders on, but it is a huge difference. You cannot put any monetary value on experience. I mean, it's just, it's crazy that they just see it, a body as a body, and that's just awful.
Well, and before we did our huge coordinated mediation too, the nurses did the same for the docs, because they were like, well, let's do coordinated, speed mediation with just the nurses. And, the docs, they're not quite there yet. And we said no also, because we're all in this together. And so it's been a very reciprocal, great relationship. I tell everybody, we may have some difficulties. We don't have IV therapy. We don't always have a resource or rapid response nurse. A lot of times we're out there just kind of, figuring out how to make it work and fill the need at the time when it happens. And it's very, different than at the big hospitals, but you will never find a better group of coworkers than at Newburgh.
No.
I love that.
That's awesome.
So Providence doesn't realize is how much this is making us all so close. And we realize just how great we are, which is sad, but also really great to see the unity. That's, I think, has always been. And then we realize
it's like when you have a really cruddy boss and all of the staff end up bonding and like trauma bonding.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the same kind of thing, except for, it's the Providence Corporation and we're all trauma bonding together.
I get it.
Yeah, they probably think they're breaking you down, and they're doing the exact opposite, as you get stronger when people come together like that. So, they didn't get away with, they didn't win that one. I mean, that's for sure. All right, let's get into this week's problem of the week, which is sponsored by Stink Bomb Odor Blocker, our lovely sponsors.
Problem of the week.
Erica, even though it's wintertime and it's freezing, and here in Florida it's cold for me, I love thinking of summertime, and nothing reminds me more than a pina colada, which leads me to Stink Bomb Odor Blocker, because I love their pina colada scent. So if you're freezing your butt off and you need some odor blocking technology,
yeah,
yes, you should try Stink Bomb Odor Blocker. No joke, seriously though, this reminds me of summertime. I love pina colada.
Did you know that it's made of pure beeswax sourced from a small bee farm, and that a portion of the monthly sales are donated to the University of Minnesota Native Bee Lab? And of course, it's made by an ED nurse. It's a small woman-owned business by an ED nurse. Tell them where they can get it.
Yeah, go to stinkbombodorblocker.com and use code UNCORKED15 for 15% off. So let's talk about this one. It's a rather long problem, so I'm going to try to kind of condense it down. But this nurse works for an HCA facility. I'm not sure if that's important to the conversation, but I thought I'd throw that in there. And has
Usually is.
recently accepted a new position into ICU. So that's a new place, I guess. I'm not sure where they're coming from, but they need orientation. So the questions that this particular nurse had is, when accepting an assignment, am I accepting the room numbers or the patients? For example, if they give me 3 patients, but all are PCU level care, I feel this would be okay. However, let's say I downgrade and now I have 2 downgrades and 1 brand new unstable ICU patient. I do not feel that this is safe. Am I screwed because I previously accepted the assignment when it was 3 downgrades, or do I still have the ability to refuse the new patient? I think yes.
Yes.
Just
what?
because, yes, you have the ability to refuse if it's not safe.
Yeah.
Regardless, if you accepted the rooms, you accepted 3 rooms, if whatever's in that room changes, I don't think it matters at all.
Not only can you're obligated to, per the Board of Nursing, right? Per the Code of Ethics for nurses, right? You are obligated as a nurse to refuse what you know to be an unsafe assignment, because when you go before the board, they're not going to care about any of the other information, the excuses. It's irrelevant. They're only going to ask you, did you know it was unsafe? Yes. Why did you accept what you knew was unsafe and place patients at risk? Period. The end.
Follow-up to that, she asked, so when refusing an assignment, do I need to give a reason beyond saying that 3 patients is too many to care for safely? I feel like that's a good enough reason, because in the ICU, they're all very sick and it could go to shit at any time. But I'm not sure if I need to give more appropriate refusal of why I won't take the assignment. Probably you should give an explanation, I think. I think
you should, but it's a little tricky, because then they will probably just kind of try to use it to manipulate you and gaslight you and saying, oh, well, you're concerned about this, but that's not so bad, blah, 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 blah. I think always going back to patient safety, like a broken record, circling back all the time. It's a patient safety issue. It's not safe for the patient. It's not safe for my license. Just say that over and over and over again. And then if you can, try to throw in there, we know on evidence-based research that based on the acuity, this should be a 2-to-1 assignment or whatever. And if it's something super specific, like, I don't know, they're on ECMO or CRRT or something crazy, then throw that in there. But I would just really focus on, it's a patient safety issue and it's not safe for my license.
And then the last part, I know this is long, but this is important. They ask, so when they're precepting, because mind you, they've never done ICU, so they're under a preceptor, okay? If my preceptor accepts an unsafe assignment, and am I responsible as well if something goes wrong? If I am responsible, any advice as to how to navigate refusing an assignment if I'm under a preceptor? These are all great questions.
That is a great question, but they're a licensed nurse, right?
Yes, they're a licensed nurse, but they're learning completely,
right.
like that.
But
be like
in the
never
eyes
doing...
of the Board of Nursing, you're a licensed nurse. Like that would play in more for your employer, your employment situation, right? But you are a licensed nurse. Do you carry liability in that situation?
You're gonna be, you're going to be on the chart, because you're going to be working with the experienced nurse. So I would say, yes, you are responsible. And that,
if you were like a student or you're a GN, you hadn't passed the NCLEX yet, that might be different, but you're a licensed nurse. So yeah, you hold light, and it's tricky. Like, I'm not saying that's not challenging and tricky to navigate, but
yeah, because you might piss somebody off. You're already new on the unit, and you're already but you got to do what you got to do to not get in trouble, not lose your license. So I don't know, be ballsy. Just do what you got to do to
have courage.
Yeah, have courage. But those are all great questions.
Those were good questions.
Yeah, then I'm sure a lot of people have. Good luck in your new ICU role, and don't let them bulldoze you. That'd be my advice.
Yep.
So I was going to ask Dr. Lincoln, this is a really interesting question here. I'm interested to hear about this one. At one point, your OB hospitalist group became aware that you get less sick time than internal med hospitalists do. So you asked Providence to address the discrepancy. I kind of know this answer, but I want to What was their response and the outcome of that when you guys brought that up to them?
Yes. So their response was to drop everybody's sick time down to the lowest, which I guess was equal in their mind,
Punitive.
but is not, is kind of weird. And that did change. They did change that only after I made a social post, and it was with Perfect Union, which is a fantastic account to follow.
Yeah, I love that.
And got millions of views, and people appropriately, patients, everyday people were like, wait, so they want you to come to work when you're sick, reacted, and there was huge support, and then they reversed course.
Good.
So that showed us that, unfortunately, the only way we get anywhere with Providence is by flexing our muscles. And I want it to not be spun like, and I know we're going to talk about this, that Providence says that we've always been gunning for this strike and that is our goal. 100% not. We have been bargaining all of our units for well over a year. Some of the nurses have had expired contracts, I believe, for a year and a half. We have been trying, we have compromised, we have proposals that have gone back and forth, and they are only finally doing something when we go big or go home, which sucks because we would all rather be just at work doing our jobs right now and helping our patients. And Providence has delayed this and dragged it out. For my bargaining unit, it took them almost 9 months. For the most significant thing they agreed to was to allow us to put up a bulletin board. I'm not even joking. Not even joking, right? They wanted to delay. And we know these are tactics, but for them, Providence, to use the media to say that we've been gunning for this strike and we've been doing these things, and they only respond when we make these calls and use media is really unfortunate, because people's health is not a game, and yet Providence is using patients and their ultimate bottom line as chess pieces, and that is despicable. These are people's lives.
Yeah.
It was a huge realization moment for me the other day when I was like, we're kind of taking on the Kroger of healthcare. Like, you don't think of it because you're in this little hospital,
right,
that you're taking on this huge corporation, but we are. It's one of the top 5 healthcare organizations in America. It's not a small, just, making decisions at the table with us thing. It's well beyond that.
Right. Yeah. And Denise, I don't know, like, we're new to this. You've been in the union, you've bargained, this is our first contract, but I think as doctors, we're especially insulated and a little bit naive when it comes to what we think, because we think people are going to do what's right. I don't think we realized just how big and bad Providence was in terms of this, and like this, their refusal to come to the table before the strike. I just thought, like, that's what all hospitals do, and learning that is absolutely not, and it's illegal, is mind-blowing to me, because you keep thinking, well, they can't, right? It can't be this way. And to know that at St. Vincent's, at my hospital, where we bring in, I believe, 20% of their revenue, they don't want to compensate the people, again, not above and beyond, just fairly. And yet they want to advertise that we're a top 50 hospital constantly. But how do you think they got there?
Right.
It's not by cutting salaries and people leaving. It really is mind-blowing.
Yeah. Jessica and I went to a strike against Providence. Was it earlier this year or last year in Everett, Washington? And the horror stories that we heard from the nurses there. Yeah, I think this is kind of their MO, in my opinion. Providence, they don't seem to play fair. But Denise, has Providence been compliant with the new state staffing laws?
So, unfortunately, no.
So disappointing.
I know, and it kind of is on par with everything, though, so it's not really shocking at this point to those of us. Like I said, I was on the staffing committee, and to give you an idea, the ICU wanted a 1-to-1 patient ratio carved out in there. So we're talking people we just got ROSC on, got them back from coding. we do take people post-stroke after giving them TPA. That's an intensive one-to-one patient where you're monitoring their neuro changes like every 5 to 15 minutes. That's not something you can balance two people with. Patients getting an MTP, a massive transfusion protocol, getting blood slammed into them because they're trying to exsanguinate, those kinds of patients need to be one-to-one. And we asked for that. And our CNO bullied and said, well, this is just a 4-bed ICU. I can't believe we can't get an agreement here, and got people to vote for her. But at the same time, the other hospitals are getting that in their ones that are submitted to OHA. So it's just one of those things where you're having this tiny little unit and we're trying to be David taking on Goliath. But in regards specifically to the staffing plan, I digress. So Providence system-wide has decided that, well, the Oregon staffing ratio says 1-5 for med-surg. That's med-surg's staffing plan. I'm sure you guys are familiar with evidence-based standards, and, having staff plans that have acuity has been a thing for over a decade. We've had it at Newburgh for well over a decade. And so for our med-surg unit, they couldn't vote yes on it because they were like, this is crazy. I can't take care of a 2-person max assist trying to climb out of bed patient all night long and also have another 4 of them. That's not a thing. We balance the loads, and that way you can actually have the time you need at the bedside to prevent those falls, prevent those pressure ulcers. And so instead of working with the med-surg unit, they decided, well, we're just going to submit to the staffing plan as if we all had voted on it and say that it's 1-5, and that's how it's going to be on the med-surg floor. So system-wide, they did this, and complaints were filed to the Oregon Health Authority, and they've been investigating it. And at every single hospital they've investigated for this, they have found that Providence violated the law and that they are submitting plans without a vote, which is not allowed under the law.
It's not legal.
Yeah.
That's
nice.
so disappointing to hear.
This isn't one of the questions we have, but I was going to ask Dr. Lincoln, I know, here, I always hear my husband complaining about if you get a physician, obviously that leaves, and no fault to them, if they want to go somewhere to make more money, you almost don't blame them. It's like, you can only take so much beating, before you're just like, this isn't fair. But I was here, I feel like they're like, well, then just get another doctor. But they don't take into account the credentialing and getting them credentialed at the hospital and all the time that it takes, the in between from hiring somebody before they're actually up and ready to go. And then they just expect all the doctors there to pick up the slack and fill in all these shifts that this other doctor was supposed to be doing. And it's like, just suck it up. And then by the time you finally get to that point that doctor can start, somebody else leaves. It's like this nonstop, never ending cycle of constantly being short staffed and expecting. Do you find that that's similar?
Right. Yeah. So my core OB hospitalist group is small and so very mighty, I should say. And also all female. And we do a great job. And we've also had injuries and surgeries and illness, as you can imagine. Yeah. And we've been short these past couple of months. It's been really hard. So we do the best we can to pick up. One of the things we asked for in our proposal was increased FTE so we could hire another person, and also the ability to have somebody we could bring in on a backup if something is acute and we need the help. And they refused. And that issue you mentioned, where it's just sort of this cycle, right, is really more pronounced for the internal medicine hospitalists, where they are hemorrhaging nurse practitioners and physicians, where, like you said, they come on board, they're told one thing, and then the thing happens by the time they finally get on board, and then they go, what am I doing? And they leave. Just last week, they were staffed for 280 patients, all the hospitalist services. They were caring for over 340 patients. They can bring in volunteer shifts, and pay and work for that. But I think we can all agree that that is not safe. And when we have this data to show that this is not working, and you had this committee I spoke about, where did nothing, the being told that, well, we'll help you in a year and you'll have no teeth. But yeah, and then what happens is this toxic culture is you have a bad outcome because you didn't have enough people and it doesn't feel good and you're worried about your license. And it's really hard to see that executives in suits who don't see or touch patients have the decision to decide who is at the bedside.
Exactly.
Whether it's somebody unexperienced or how many people they think is okay. I just think that they would think very differently if they were the one at that bed, waiting, not being able to be assessed by their nurse, not because their nurse is lazy, but because, like Denise said, their nurse is busy with the other patient who has much higher needs. And we're all just trying to do the best that we can.
Yep. So this question would be for either of you ladies. Providence recently made some changes that impact your health insurance. Can one of you guys tell us about that? What were those changes?
So what happened was Providence, which, as you know, is not just a hospital, they are an insurer. So they, are able to insure, and that has always been the health care that has been offered to Providence employees, which kind of makes sense, right? Although we should talk about that. And that should not be allowed, but anyway, whatever. So starting January 1st, they two things happened. The first is that all employees are now no longer insured by Providence. They're insured by Aetna, which I don't understand. I have some thoughts. So that's number one. And then number two is also, as of January 1st, Providence is no longer accepting Aetna because Aetna and Providence were not able to negotiate. This is sounding familiar. And so Providence dropped Aetna because the reimbursement rates from Aetna allegedly were not good enough. Now, I think both are probably at fault here, right? Insurance, I think, is having a moment that we realize how crappy it is.
Yeah.
So this goes out. But what's weird is that they're saying that if you're a Providence employee with Aetna, they'll still take that Aetna. But they won't take the 9,000 or 10,000 Oregonians who previously were insured on Providence and now no longer can and are scrambling. And the other noodle here that's really, really fun is that two things. The first is that if you're a woman and you want access to reproductive health care now on Aetna, you have to call Aetna and get a separate, I'm calling it a woman card, you can call it uterus card, which you have to use that in order to reimburse for any contraceptive services. Now, I don't know if that's why Providence changed up things. They didn't no longer wanted to pay for contraception and whatnot, but that's all alleged, and we're not going to go into that today. The second thing is that two nurses who were looking at the same exact PCP who have Aetna now, looked up a PCP, and one was told that it would be maximum savings and the other would be standard savings. This was just yesterday. And when they chatted with the Aetna representative to say, now, why is Aetna reimbursing differently? The Aetna representative said it was because it was based on their zip code, that there's different reimbursements based on where you live, but it's the same doctor and the same insurance. And this is why Denise and I were both looking at each other like, how do you tell this story? Because it sounds made up.
Yeah,
it does. It sounds like a joke.
It's crazy.
It sounds like a weird, like an April Fool's joke.
Yes. So that is the insurance. And Denise, if you have anything else to add, but it keeps getting wilder.
I saw that a couple days ago and I just, laughed. Not surprised, but ridiculous,
It basically took all of the nurses at Newburgh and every single one of them was like, oh my gosh, is my doctor still in network? Even though they're a Providence doctor. It's hard enough in Newburgh for women's health care. There is no providers that are Providence. They have legacy providers that they allow in-house. So they're in our hospital, but they're not Providence in network. It's crazy.
What a mess. That sounds...
Mess. It's a big stinking mess.
Denise, you guys had a 3-day strike in June of 2024 last year. Were you a part of that? And did that result in any meaningful changes?
Well, Providence told us that day-long strike and, what is that? Brain fart. The strike where it's just for a short duration.
Closed-ended.
Yes, thank you. Those are not going to really go anywhere with Providence because they refused to meet with us during the 10-day pre-strike period. Then they refused to meet with us during the strike. And then they locked us out for 2 additional days. So people who were supposed to be able to go back to work, they were like, oh no, sorry, we kind of paid for these scabs. They're going to be here for 2 more days, so you can't work.
They love to do that. They love that.
I was flabbergasted, but yeah.
Well, now you're doing an open-ended strike. So
yeah,
I love it.
So,
I love it. They
yeah,
said the close-ended strike wasn't going to accomplish anything. Well, guess what? Now you have to deal with the open-ended strike.
I will say that the wage offers we got before the strike and how they treated Medford, which was kind of, because we were all together at this coordinated mediation before the strike in June. And it was in Wilsonville at this like hotel place. It was really cool. Very solidarity bringing. All of us were in a room talking to each other. And there was this moment where Medford came back and they were just crying, like tears streaming down their face, because all of us had hoped and thought we were going to get this contract hammered out during this mediation. It was going to be a no-brainer. How could they let 6 hospitals strike at once? So Medford comes back in second to last day, streaming with tears. And we're like, what's going on? And they're like, they're continuing to only offer regressive offers. So ones that were worse than the offers before mediation. And at that point, it was like, there was this worry, this tension in the room of, are we going to break up? Are we going to say, the rest of us are moving on, let's keep going? Or are we going to stand together with Medford? And Medford was terrified that the big city hospitals were going to leave them behind. And we were like, absolutely not. And it just turned all this like fear and anxiety to anger and resolve and just a feeling of contentment of being there together and having each other's backs. And so the next morning, we, submitted counter proposals, which Jen, just like you, the Oregon units have all submitted counter proposals and are waiting on Providence. So, anyway, so we had the meeting, and the next morning, Friday morning, we were waiting for their offers. They took their supposals, which is just, it's not, you can't hold me to it. Yeah. And turned it into a official proposal. No changes Friday at all from what the like tumultuous Thursday was. So we issued our strike notice. Went on strike. I have a really great sign. It says equal pay for equal work. And because, and we had Rosie the Riveter hats and stuff going on.
Did you have a scabby rat?
Scabby.
We only have one scabby rat, and it was up at St. V, so that's okay. All right. But
sounds like
we came back, and what we ended up getting from it was the knowledge that Providence doesn't really give a crap about the shorter strikes, and B, that we were all in this together. And then financially, and not just financially, but contract wise, the offer that we had before that strike and the offer that we got back was much improved. So Providence themselves is communicating to us, you need to strike before we're going to do anything real.
I think this next question we touched on a little bit earlier, but I'll actually give this one to Dr. Lincoln. Has touched a little bit more on how Providence has attempted to, or have they attempted to create a rift between the doctors and the nurses, and how exactly is that happening or not happening?
Yeah, well, we've kind of hit on how Providence is trying to separate out different bargaining units, and as of yesterday, directly tried to pit the nurses against the doctors, saying they wanted to only bargain with the doctors. As we've said, we have never left the table. We've been there, and we welcome their counter proposals. I think what they've really tried to do is they have tried to make it sound like we revel in this and we are so excited about a strike, and we have all waited to try to do this together because this has always been our goal. And it has not been our goal. This is just what happens when Providence continues to delay and do anything about expired contracts. Eventually, they are all going to line up. So this is a problem created by Providence that can be resolved by Providence. And I know Denise, I know myself, I know all the hospitalists, all the other people, the midwives, the nurses. None of us want this strike. It's just like we've been saying here, Providence has shown us the only time they will respond is when we meet them head on. And so we have just like an OB hospital, I plan for the worst. I carry a scalpel in my pocket in case something bad happens. It does not mean I'm looking for people to take back for emergency C-sections under local anesthesia. I am just ready. This is the same way as we have just been ready and prepared, because this is not ONA's first rodeo. And we have seen also what Providence does. So we have been prepared for the potential of a coordinated strike and have done everything to prevent it in the meantime. And so Providence, the chess move is yours. What will you do?
Providence has accused the Oregon Nurses Association publicly of working for months toward a system-wide strike, which you touched on earlier, noting that several different bargaining units are involved. And around here, we just call that a coordinated strike and a badass power move. I love to see that. But can you tell us about any other union busting Providence has allegedly been doing since they received your strike notice?
So union busting, yeah, it's big, it's bad. There's a lot of misinformation. So they send out emails saying that we have reached agreements on things that we haven't. They have lied about, for example, raises they've given, which were old raises. So the misinformation, number one. The second thing is that people are going around telling other nurses that the doctors aren't going to walk out. They're going to leave you behind. There's no unity. There's no agreement. And this is coming from some higher ups saying this to people for the purpose of sowing fear. Then this is, we all know, is union busting 101. Exactly. And those are some of the big things, just kind of sowing this fear. And I think it's worked in the opposite, because we hear that and we go, oh, no. Our strike authorization vote was over 95%. We have other physicians in the community who have said that they will not cross the line when they've been asked to take our shifts. So it's only building that resolve. But those are some of the big things that I've heard about, is just these media ploys. Oh, the other one is being illegally contacted asking if we're going to work these shifts. That is a violation of Section 7 of our National Labor Board. I don't know. I just want to deliver babies. I don't want to do this. But we can be lawyers. And so people get scared. They go, oh my goodness, what do I do? And so we have to, again, say, you're not allowed to ask you this. You don't have to answer it. And we're physicians, we're rule followers. We think we have to, but we don't. And fighting back that way is uncomfortable. But when you tell people this is union busting, they feel a lot better about it, knowing that it's a tactic.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I would say at Newburgh, before the 3-day strike and across many of the hospitals as well, our CNAs didn't want to cross the picket line. They wanted to stand in solidarity with the nurses because they're seeing what Providence is doing too. Like, all the disciplines are seeing what Providence is doing too, and they're not enthused, to put it lightly. But they told our CNAs they would be fired if they did not come to work that week. And so our poor CNAs, they're not represented. They're people, they're moms, they're breadwinners. They went to work, and as soon as we came back, they were in tears and hugging us. There's so many things they do. The fear tactics, the talking in the media, and the email write-ups of what occurred during bargaining are out of a fiction novel. Yeah, they're completely fabricated. And the letters that they send from each CNO to the nurses and hospital-wide, they try and make them come off as if they're these personalized. And it hurts me personally and professionally that you're going to strike. But then you look and you realize, oh, it's the exact same letter sent at every hospital. It just, so many things. It's the trying to do the fear. They've told all of the disciplines at Newburgh that they don't get raises this year, and it's the greedy nurse's fault. Mm-hmm. So you can imagine getting to work side by side your respiratory therapist who desperately needs their annual raise, and they've been told it's your fault.
They're trying to divide you guys. Yeah.
Yeah. It's rough, but yeah.
Before we get into the rest of our questions for this week's podcast, we're going to take a quick break and do our Enema of the Week award.
Enema of the Week!
Have you seen that new documentary on Netflix that's all about the gut microbiome, gut health?
I haven't, but I need to check it out now that you mention it.
Yeah, it's fascinating. And there's this company, our sponsor, Happy Bum Co., and they're changing the way that people talk and think about gut health. There's all sorts of studies now showing that it's like our second brain. Everything is regulated by our gut microbiome. And they have developed an at-home enema solution. They're an award-winning enema kit that you can do at home, and it's all natural. Tell them where they can find it.
You can go to happybumco.com, and they're offering 15% off by using code Nurses Uncorked. Check it out. It's an amazing product.
I have an Enema of the Week award, and as always, it is brought to you by Happy Bum Co., a leader in at-home enema solutions. So I want to say allegedly, there's no way to actually confirm this, but and I'll leave his name out, but you can find it if you look, a CEO of Frio Regional Hospital. It's an HCA facility in Texas.
Again with HCA.
It's always HCA when it's a problem. Allegedly posted something to Reddit, to the nursing thread on Reddit. And Reddit's supposed to be kind of anonymous, right? But he made the error of using the same username on everything.
Oh, Jesus.
So people quickly figured out who it was. Now, again, allegedly, we can't necessarily prove that it's him, but people are pretty convinced. Okay, so I'm just going to read you his little Reddit post here.
Okay.
What's the grueling part? Nurses don't want to give breathing treatments, so respiratory therapists do it. They don't want to change linens, so EVS does it. They don't want to change gowns or adult diapers, so they have CNAs do it. They don't want to toilet patients, so they have therapists do it. Don't want to answer phones, so unit clerks do it. Don't want to pass meds, so CNAs do it. They have to do the assessment and the MAR. So yeah, I guess the computer work can be real taxing. Oh. Sure, there are crucial moments when your skill set is necessary and can be life-saving, but I don't dress up the day-to-day as grueling.
I don't like this person. I don't like this person.
Yeah, if anyone is deserving of an Enema Award, it's that person that wrote that, right?
That's awful.
It's so bad in so many ways. And what CNAs are passing meds, first of all, like that just shows how uneducated you are. Come on now. This person needs to come and spend a 12-hour shift with a nurse.
Yeah. See why a nurse doesn't have time to make up the beds and clean the room, and why they don't have time to also be the unit clerk. Just spend one fucking shift with a nurse, and I want you to take that Reddit thread and stick it where the sun don't shine. That's all I gotta say.
Can you hear my dog barking?
Yeah, he's pissed off too.
Oh
I don't blame him.
She's going
I don't
crazy.
blame him. I'm leaving that in the episode.
We're just gonna let her bark at this CEO. There's a reason, Mr. CEO man, that a large part of nursing school focuses on delegation and how important it is, because everyone recognizes that the RN simply cannot be an effective nurse and do what they need to do if they are doing everyone else's job.
And learn to change your username, you ding dong.
Yeah, idiot. The Enema Award of the Week goes to you, JRH Live on Reddit.
I thought you said you were going to say it. She changed her mind.
That's just a username.
Oh, okay. All right. Fair enough. Okay. JRH Live. Love it. Enjoy. All right. Let's jump right back into questions. How did it feel when Providence announced that they refused to negotiate anymore before the strike? And I'll add a little bit to this. Do you think that they will maybe come through before the strike even happens? I'll kind of make that a two-part question.
I am extremely hopeful, but then again, I never wanted to have to strike in the first place. I just want to be able to compromise. We went through mediation at this last expedited mediation, and pretty much we're willing to throw out everything, including the kitchen sink, to come to a deal and compromise with them. And they moved on none of it. So it just, I don't know. I don't have a lot of faith in Providence and the current people leading them right now. People say they've lost their way, and I think that's an understatement, unfortunately. I am hopeful that thanks to our lovely docs who are standing together with us side by side, that perhaps maybe this time will be different. Maybe they will come back to the table. Maybe they will bring actual real offers that can get a contract. Because at the end of the day, it's not me voting on it. I have to bring something back that my nurses have said, this is my priority. This is my priority. If you don't have a contract with that in it, don't bother. So I've got to get something that I can get ratified. And I'm just hopeful every day. I guess I'm kind of naive. I keep a positive look like, oh, surely this won't happen. They'll do that. And then, you get kind of beat down a little more. But, I'm hopeful that they will come back and we'll be able to talk and get this averted, because I would much rather be at the bedside than outside in the freezing cold rain.
Mm-hmm.
I echo what Denise says. I too am hopeful. I think when you take an oath to help people when they're most vulnerable, you assume that the people who are running this hospital similarly see that. And maybe I'm not smart because there has been no evidence to that. But maybe it will happen. And maybe with us, like Denise said, as physicians standing up, it feels really unsettling to see that our power is what potentially can push them. And it feels good knowing that we can do this, but it also feels very unsettling because there should not be this hierarchy of how we care for caregivers because it's a team sport. So I am hopeful. And when it initially, we asked Jessica, how did we initially feel when we heard that Providence said they would not bargain? I didn't know what to feel because I'm not an expert in this. And I thought, oh, that's just the way things go. But then when I was informed of how illegal that is and how directly harmful to patients it is and how dirty it is, I felt a lot of four-letter words that I probably could say here.
I'm sure.
And I will say my bargaining team too, I listen to them because they are the ones, they have spent hundreds and hundreds of hours. These are physicians and nurse practitioners who are not being paid. And canceling holiday plans to do this. They tell us how disheartened they are and how they feel that they are getting nowhere. And so they are not optimistic, but they have compromised on so many things. And we continue to be ready to compromise. So if Providence is listening, which I'm sure that they are, know that we are not trying to get every little thing in and we're throwing temper tantrums like toddlers. We know that this is a team sport and we are bargaining in good faith. And we know that you have not been doing that yet. So we look forward to that so we can avoid this strike.
The goal is always to avert a strike, right? Mm-hmm. Always, it's so frustrating that they are playing dirty like that.
And I was going to say, one of the things we've been fighting for is better healthcare for caregivers. And Providence keeps trying to phrase it as, oh, the nurses just want to be treated better than the rest of you. And it's like, no, we're here fighting for everybody else. We want you to change it, not just for us, but all your employees. Nobody should be going into medical debt. I should not have had to put medical bills on a payment plan for over a year to be able to afford my kiddos' healthcare and my healthcare.
Exactly.
Like that, I work at healthcare. It should not be that way.
Yeah. Right. Why do healthcare workers often have the worst healthcare coverage? It is such a slap in the face and indicative of healthcare in this country, but I digress. I think the fact that the providers are standing in solidarity with the nurses, that you guys are doing this together, is so powerful. And if anything is going to bring them to the table to avert the strike, it is that. Because we know that Providence will bring in scab nurses, of course. But Dr. Lincoln, how does Providence plan to replace the providers? Because as far as I know, this is kind of uncharted territory here.
Yeah.
There aren't like scab providers, are there, that I'm not aware of? It's not locums. Like what are they going to do?
Well, that's exactly. So two things. They're trying to get other people who are local to who work for some of the other practices, like Denise said, that have privileges and deliver at our hospital or could see patients in clinic. So yes, they are trying to get people from within the system. And so far, everyone I've talked to has refused because we are all a team sport again. And that includes trying to get hospitalists from another Portland hospital, like Providence Portland Medical Center or other places to come here. And the other thing, yes, is to hire out-of-state locums and bring in people who don't know the system and would have even less orientation than those anesthesiologists I told you about who couldn't log into Epic. And it's frightening to see how much they're willing to pay them. They, because it's a small community, and some of the internal medicine hospitalists had information shared with them that locums hospitalists were being offered 70% more, 70% more for a night shift. And that's just the physician pay. And it's more than that Providence is actually paying. So Providence is trying to spend a lot more money to bring in people who are not from our community, who don't care about our community and don't know our community, rather than negotiate with us. But we are pleased to say that we have seen immense solidarity from physicians and other nurse practitioners who do not plan to do this. And like you said, that is part of our power, and it's likely part of the reason that they issued this media statement to the media, not to us, saying that they want to continue to bargain, which, again, we welcome that and we wait for them.
I wonder if that's under their insurance umbrella, Erica. You know how you always say, like, there's insurance for scab nurses, like they prepare for that. But I wonder,
a lot of organizations have strike insurance. I don't know, because first of all, physicians being unionized is fairly new and rare still. And secondly, physicians going on strike, even newer and more rare, right? So I
because
don't know.
If they don't have like insurance to cover this type of thing, they're going to panic, in my opinion, because that bottom line, they don't like paying it out,
but also the potential loss of revenue from not being able to take patients in because there aren't providers there. Yeah, that's going to hit them where it hurts. And we love to see that.
And the average nurse makes like $10,000 for 5 shifts as a scab nurse too.
Yeah. And, I always have to, I sound like a broken record, but I always want to say, and I don't know how this translates to providers, but I'm sure it's somewhat comparable. We know statistically that when scab nurses come in, that adverse patient outcomes increase by up to 20%, right? They often are not specialized in that specialty, even though on paper they are. They are not familiar with the system. They don't have the resources there. It's not surprising. So ultimately, patients pay the price when the hospital refuses to avert the strike and come to the table.
Exactly, 100%.
Yeah. And they're the ones we're doing this all for, because at the end of the day, we want the level of care to be comfortable enough that we would be okay bringing our family or getting services ourselves there.
Yeah, I would never let anybody that I care about go to a hospital that was on strike. Never.
Yeah.
I mean, you have to be like bleeding out in the only hospital, because it's not going to be safe, right?
Because it's a shit show. Seriously. Yeah. I mean, everybody doesn't know where anything is. Nobody knows how to chart anything. Half of them aren't even on the right unit. I mean, I'm laughing, but it's scary.
The firefighters in Newburgh complained to us on the strike line about the strike nurses and the ability to give them EMS report and bring people in from the EDs. So it affects all aspects of everything.
It does.
And I do want to say, legally, we are not saying that you should not come to a hospital where people are striking.
Yeah, that's just my opinion.
Legally, so these are independent opinions, but we encourage patients to seek the care that they need. And we also encourage patients to let Providence know how best to avoid the strike.
Thank you. Thank you for that.
Yeah. Do your own research as a patient. Make your own decision. Denise, how are the nurses feeling about how Providence is allegedly, let's just throw out allegedly for the whole podcast. We like to use that word, allegedly portraying you guys in the media?
I think how Jen described it with so many 4-letter adjectives, they're really pissing them off, to be frank. Yeah. It's one of those things, like everything that they're misrepresenting, making it out like we're out here just for money when that is not at all the case. I know plenty of people who are completely happy with the financial aspect of the contract offers. It's the everything else. It's just created such solidarity. People are standing together in a way that they haven't before, but it's infuriating. I mean, I've been a nurse and for quite a while now, and I'm on step 12 at Providence, and they were blasting to the media that nurses were making over $100K a year, and some of them $200K. I know people who work 5 shifts a week and don't hit 200K.
Right.
So I'd like to know what management they're adding in. But even on my step 12, which is halfway through the bracket, I just this year made my base salary to that 100K mark. So it's so
And cost of
infuriating to
living
see
is
them.
so high there.
Yeah.
I know. Yeah. And God forbid you have, student loans or a mortgage or a child or anything. It's just,
Mm-hmm.
it's hard to make it out there right now in general.
We saw that union busting tactic recently when Jessica and I were at the Kapiolani strike in Hawaii, where they were telling the media that their nurses are making I forget the exorbitant amount. Come to find out, it was one nurse from one place that had been working there for some ungodly, 40 years,
Yep.
right? That was night shift, weekends, got all, charged all the differentials at the top of the pay scale. That
She
one
was like
nurse
95. She was 90.
making that much money. None of the others even came close. But that's the narrative that they put out there publicly. It's
How do they sleep at night? I just keep hearing these stories, and you just think there's got to be enough good people that they would say that and say we can't say that. What are these executives doing? How do they sleep at night? Do they not care? Do they not think they're going to get sick? And I'm stupid, right? I took an oath, and we all are here for patients. We think that people have a soul. And it is so hard to see that this truly is about business. And it makes me so angry.
Yep.
It's like the biggest wake up slap after becoming a nurse when you get your job at the first place that shows you actually it's not about patients, it's just about making money.
Correct. Yeah.
So I always thought that. At what point do they become soulless? When do you cross that line? Is it when you start making so much money?
Their bonuses and income is based on how much they can screw the frontline healthcare workers and patients.
But gosh, is there not even a little bit of guilt in their mind? Just a tiny bit? That they don't have that inner voice, anything?
They rationalize it to themselves. They'll say from an insurance perspective, we're not denying treatment, we're denying payment. So you can still somehow pull that $500,000 out of your pocket and pay for it and get the treatment yourself. They rationalize things like that.
Yeah, I guess so. And because they're not in, Dr. Lincoln was saying earlier, they're not at the bedside. They're not seeing what the effects actually are when, you pay a new nurse versus an experienced nurse, and they're saving their dollars that way. But they're not seeing how the quality of care is just going down, 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 down,
Yeah.
Each time their pockets go up.
Well,
sad.
It's crazy too, the amount of understaffing Providence does. They have hundreds of nursing open positions. OHSU has 20 because they provide the correct level payment and benefits. They can recruit, they can retain. Yeah. And the amount of overtime I worked this last year, I made $25,000 more than the prior year because I have worked 4 shifts and sometimes more, almost every week, all year, It's exhausting, but you don't want to leave your coworkers and your friends running the ship without full staff.
Yeah.
So you almost feel guilted into needing to come in.
Empathy manipulation.
They guilt you into that. Yep.
Yeah.
Well, I know that Oregon Senator Ron Wyden announced his support of the strike publicly, which is great. But what is your feel for the local community? Are they also in support of the healthcare workers going on strike there?
Oh, yes. Just go
through the community.
Go through the comment sections, see what people are saying. Governor Tina Kotek is on board. She was on our call right before we announced the strike notice. She's in full support. The answer is yes. Randy Weingarten, who is the AFT president, was also on that call.
Wait, is his last name Weingarten?
It's a she, and it's
she
Weingarten. Yeah, but not like
and
a Weingarten.
She's a union president.
Yes, she's the president, right, Denise, of the American Federation
hilarious.
of Teachers. Yeah,
I love that. The Weingarten rights. That's
so
great. That's poetic.
And I think, not everybody's going to agree. There's always going to be people who may disagree. And I think a lot of them disagree because they don't have the right information. But I want to say, I believe in choice for everything, including people may not disagree, but overwhelmingly people are in full support. And again, it just, especially local Oregonians, they're like, wait, didn't the nurses just strike? How bad is it that they keep striking and they're not getting what they need? And now, they just announced a doctor's strike in New York City Health and Hospitals for the same time frame. So people are not dumb. They can read, they can get the information, they can read between the lines.
And Hawaii might be going on strike again, and the three would overlap the dates. So yeah, healthcare is broken, and we need the public to support us.
The only negative comments I've seen on the public thread somebody mentioned is their house supervisor. So other than that, everything has been pretty positive and supportive of us.
Good.
Yeah.
So yeah.
What can people everywhere, do to support, not just locally, but what suggestions do you have? How can people help? Spread the word, or?
I would say spread the word. We've got to try and get through the disinformation machine that Providence has. People need to know the truth. They need to know what's actually going on, minus spin. If you can contribute to the relief fund to be able to help out, we're asking single moms with multiple kids to give up pay for an unended amount of time to try and get a fair deal and get the patients what they need. So every little bit helps there. What do you think, Jen? What else? I know I'm forgetting.
Totally echo all of that. I would say there's a petition, and maybe you all can link this in your show notes or in your social.
Yes, of course.
For saying Providence, get back to the table and bargain. There's a link for that you can sign. You can also sign up for a strike picket line shift, which is huge, to have that visual support. And I think the third thing, and I think this is would be really important, is to let Providence know. And they only care about the bottom line, it seems. And so letting them know, you can either email the chief medical officer or the new CEO. I share that information on my social media, and let them know, let your local hospital, patient care, complaint lines, whatnot, to say that you need to get back to the table and we need our caregivers. I think that support is huge. And like you said, Denise, if you see something in the media and it's from Providence, unfortunately, I'm going to tell you that it's likely not accurate. And it pains me to say that because I just feel like information should be information. But you could go to our social accounts. You can go to the ONA's social accounts. And I've got this stuff printed out. We're not trying to hide anything. We can tell you all day long what's going on.
Yeah.
Yep. The ONA website has all the offers Providence has done, all the offers that we have done, with the exception of proposals, because when you're in mediation, you can't publish those.
Mm-hmm.
But the info is there. Just look at it. Providence says we're not bargaining in good faith. We're not compromising. Go look at how much we've moved and how much they've moved.
Dr. Lincoln, you do a lot of social media education and advocacy surrounding women's health. And I know you authored a book titled Let's Talk About Down There. I love that title.
I love that.
Awesome.
And we'd love to have you back on the podcast in the future to talk about all of that when you're not dealing with a strike and all. But tell everyone where they can find you.
They can find me in the fetal position in a corner of it.
I love it. Yeah, that's where she'll be for the next few weeks.
There, I'll be taking calls now. I'm totally kidding a little. I love to educate, and you can find me on Instagram, TikTok, all the places at Dr. Jennifer Lincoln. It's at Dr. Jennifer Lincoln, and I'm going to do my very best to keep things updated. So that's another way that you can get information as well. And if you just want to talk about the fun stuff like vaginas and birth control and periods and abortion and pregnancy, you can also find that content there and on my YouTube channel. And I look forward to the day when the most controversial thing I'm talking about is like the birth control pill, because this stuff is getting old, but we're not going anywhere till it's done because our patients need it.
That's right. I love everything.
And all of this will be in our show notes. So if you're listening and you're like, how do I get to the show notes? You just hit more on the episode and it all opens up, because believe it or not, some people don't know to do that. And all these links will be there. So
thank you, ladies, so much for coming on and sharing your experience and knowledge about this. And we are going to be rooting for you guys with this incredibly historic strike that's going to be here just around the corner.
Also, Erica is very good about sharing things on her social media so that people can also be updated and follow. And I will be helping out in doing that as well. And I'm sure the podcast will get a lot of listeners as to what's going on. So
thank you. This was really great to be on here.
Anytime. We love hitting all the hard topics that need to be talked about. And especially Erica here, her face lights up when she hears an open-ended strike. There's nothing that makes this woman more happy.
Excited. I'm like, yes, power.
Yes.
Power.
So the opposite reaction.
I know. When you're the one that's in it, it's different, but it is a power move. It's so strong, and it takes a lot of brave people
used to
do that.
Like, these little close-ended strikes really weren't a thing historically, right? And they, they have their time and place, and they do serve a purpose. But in my opinion, nothing says we're not backing down.
We mean business. Yeah, we mean business.
Than an open-ended strike. And you add in providers, powerful.
We looked into like billing strikes, like, you see patients but you don't bill or whatever, which is stuff I didn't know existed. And we were advised that legally that would not be allowed based on how our contract is. So I also want people to know, like, we have looked at everything that involves not showing
to try
up
to avoid it
for patient care. And then we realized there really was, unfortunately, no other avenue and can still be avoided.
Well, thank you again. And next time for the next Nurses Uncorked.